All right, so for those of you just joining us, and also for those of you watching from home, thank you again for joining. I am your host, Brian Anselin, the program manager at LineRun, and also the host of foundersTake, a live video podcast series spotlighting entrepreneurs, their incredible work, and the lessons learned through their journey. So LineRun is an experiential career and industry education platform for tomorrow's workforce. We empower our community of leaders to connect, innovate, and grow through media, events, and programs such as today's session. Today, we are extremely happy and fortunate to have Jedi Weller, founder and CEO of OpenForge, joining us for our discussion on empowering your team's growth during a pandemic. So a relevant topic, definitely, with what's going on in the world today. So a little bit about Jedi. He's an expert in mobile applications, product design, and rapid prototyping. He is currently the CEO and head of innovation at OpenForge and organizes the startup Junto, Ionic, and Angular meetups in Philadelphia. He has been a speaker and mentor at events across the world, including the Thailand Startup Summit, the New York City and San Francisco Developer Week, Austin's South by Southwest, the Web Summit, and more. On a day-to-day basis, Jedi can be found playing strategy games, hiking mountains, gaming on his PC, and performing Jedi mind tricks to the masses, and or hanging out with his dogs.
Yeah, which you'll see back here. I got one down there, and the other one, Jake, is right here. So for joining us today.
All right. So again, I really appreciate it, and I'm really happy that we were able to share your story and your experiences with our community.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm really glad to be here. I mean, as you know, right, like I do a lot in the startup community, and I thank a lot of my success to like the help that I was given, right, and I'm continuously given. So always happy to to give back and to kind of share like what we're doing. It's all about growing together, right? So.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And on that note, you've been working in and around software for many years, going back for as long as I've known you and beyond that.
Yeah.
Had multiple ventures in and around tech.
Yeah.
What originally led you to become an entrepreneur, and specifically in the niche that you're working in right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, so it's interesting. So, I'm a software developer by trade, right? And the reason I got into software development was because of gaming. So I actually, I used to play this old video game called Tribes 2. And back with Tribes 2, in order to have a clan page that, looked really cool and, and really hot, you had to actually code it in HTML and CSS. So thanks to that, right, I was like, okay, well, I want to know how to, I want to have a really cool clan. So therefore I need to learn coding, right? And that's what got me into like technology in general. And since then, I've been, a software developer, ever since then. But I think my passion has always been more on the entrepreneurial side. I love just solving problems and just creating things, right? Like I'm a creator. So when I was in college and I went to Drexel University, it was a great curriculum, and it was a great program, and specifically because I was able to go out all my different co-ops and work in the industry. And what I found from working in the industry is that I learned a ton, right? I learned so much about professional development, about work experience, etc. But I also learned that I am definitely not the type of individual who wants to work in an office my entire life, right? And I hated not having control, right? Like, whenever I worked for different companies, I would see problems, right, that just like needed to be solved. And I'd be constantly questioning and saying like, why the hell are we doing this way, and that's what I got into entrepreneurship for, because I wanted to have the ability, and the power to actually make a change and make that impact, right? And I think a lot of people, specifically in our generation, I think they feel the same way, whether they're on their own entrepreneurship path or whether they're joining a mission-driven company, right? I think either way, our generation is all about, like making an impact, making a difference, and not just, getting a job.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up about our generation because it's more that I believe that we share a viewpoint of trying to help other people and about building a community around a mission versus just clocking in to a nine to five job and then leaving, going back into your own cocoon.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that what you said with our generation and added with how startups and entrepreneurship really take that by the bull by the horns, so to say, and allow people to run with it, provides uh, one, I think, a really incredible peace of mind that you can actually work on something that you can own, and then two, give you the platform to help a lot of people in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man.
Definitely. And how has your view of, entrepreneurship and being your own boss, how has that really evolved since you started your first company to where you are now?
Oh, wow. Oh, I mean, the entire view has changed, right? Like, when I remember when I first started like the company, I started with my co-founder, Liz, and we came into it with two different skill sets, right? So I was on the development and the sales side, right?
Okay.
And she was on the design and the HR side, right? Like the internal side. Um, so, like when we started, I thought to myself, okay, well, it's, a company must be as easy as just saying, okay, well, here's what we need to do, assign the work, someone's going to go do it. And then, you're good. And that was like far from the truth. Right. I think the biggest like lesson that I learned is kind of about people management.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm the best by any means, but I've come a long way. And what I mean by that is, the kind of like the emotional side and like the I don't know if we're supposed to call them soft skills anymore, but what I know is like soft skills. I think they're actually one of the most valuable like things that any founder could learn, because at the end of the day, everything you can accomplish, you can only accomplish because of your team, right? So it has to be a joint effort and a collective effort. And I truly believe that. And I think that's probably been like the biggest like change in perception or change in shift. There's other things I learned along the way, right? Like how to do operations, how to do sales, how to do contracts, how to optimize for efficiency. I mean, that's like one of the biggest ones that I recommend to all of our customers and all of our clients, right? Whenever we're doing startup consulting, is become efficient now, especially if you want to iterate frequently in the future. So there's things like that, but overall, I think the people skills is like the biggest thing.
Definitely. And I think the ability for a founder or just a leader in general to not, to have the ability to not take out their anger, frustration, and stress out on their team and to allow them to grow and to fix their own problems while also making sure that, you have a handle on things is a really important skill. And,
Mhm.
and doubling on your insight, it's being able to communicate and also understand people. So, being a boss isn't just about giving tasks, but it's also about understanding what the strengths and weaknesses of your team are and trying to balance it out somehow, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are really important points, definitely.
Yeah.
We kind of see it in the picture in the background of how you like to work and how you really function as both a software developer and as a boss.
Mhm.
But can you describe what a regular day in your life is and how you organize those responsibilities and keep yourself accountable?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take that in two parts. So, like the first part I think is like the actual environment, right? So we employ about 20 people on like a full-time basis at OpenForge. And half of the team has typically been remote, and half the team has been like, in person here in Philadelphia. And then we have like a number of contractors, right? Who either come in or, operate on site whenever. So we traditionally had a lot of investment in our actual office space. And I was constantly like, at the office every day, and the team was at the office every day. And I think there's a lot to be said about in-person interactions. Obviously, with COVID, right, and everything that's been happening in the past couple months, I mean, that's completely changed, right? Um, and I have to say, like, what's happening with COVID is very sad, right? And I personally know people who have died from it. But on the business side of it, and like the work from home impact, I know myself and my whole entire team, have enjoyed the change of pace, right? It's something that we never thought was possible before, to all work from home. And now we're seeing that our assumptions were completely changed, right? So yeah, so I'm actually in the process. Big news. I'm actually in the process of closing on a house, and I'll be updating my office space so that I have a larger place in the city. So I actually have a separate office from my bedroom, which I'm very excited about.
It's really incredible news. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But the one downside is that when you get loud traffic outside, it hurts video calls. So hopefully you guys can't hear that too much.
That's okay. You're in
Cool.
the process of moving on up. It comes with the territory, right? And living in the big city, you deal with the noise.
Yeah,
If you live on the outskirts, or in a rural area, you deal with the air.
yeah,
So it's kind of a trade-off, right?
yeah. Exactly. And then the other side of that, I think, is what was the second part of the question? Is essentially like like personal development, or what?
Yeah, like accountability. How do you keep yourself accountable, especially if you're working on your own?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question, right? I think that's like the true difference between a founder, right, and someone who should consider themselves like whether or not they want to found their own company, versus someone who can be like a high-level executive or like a high-level team member within a startup organization. Because at the end of the day, there is no plan, right, for a founder. Like your day is completely going to go up and down and left and right. I would consider myself, I'm a member of a couple peer advisory groups. So like I talk very frequently to about like 100 other founders, and I'd consider myself very, very organized when it comes to that, right? So I try to make sure that every day I have a task list written in my notebook, right, for what I'm going to be working on. I find that really helps, to make sure that I'm constantly moving forward. I live by inbox zero. I don't know if anyone else has ever tried it, but it's I actually just started doing inbox zero because it helped my OCD. And I didn't even know about the whole inbox zero movement at that time. That's really helped, right? But overall, like I think in terms of just like organization and like knowing what your expectations are, as like a founder, like our job is to deal with the stuff that comes up, right? And it's so important that everyone who like is coming into these meetings and watching these videos, that you guys understand, right? You're not alone. If you are a founder and you're going through it, right? Everyone goes through the same stuff, right? But B, that there are like certain practices, like inbox zero and like meditation and even just exercise that can really help kind of like keep your blood flowing and keep you moving forward as a founder. I think that's pretty important. Do you have any particular tricks that you do?
Well, I have a dual method. So I use Google Calendar to list out in the beginning of the week all the things I have to do that week and prioritize. But then every night I go into, and I set it for the same exact, task every day for 7 days for a whole week.
Yeah.
But then every night I will go in there and then write down, like you, in the notebook, okay, this is what I got done, but then this is what I really need to do tomorrow. And then I go off of the notebook so I
Yeah.
can cross check. So it's kind of like that visualization method where if you can use different senses and you can connect in your brain that, okay, I see I have to do it, but then you actually write it down, you're more likely to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're on the same page on that front, I think.
Yeah, and if you look at if I can show this, my calendar, right? Those are just the meetings I have this week, right? And that's not even like I don't even block off my own work. Yeah, it's crazy.
white space equals your own work. That I
Yeah,
think that's the rule of entrepreneurs. You work in the white space.
exactly, exactly.
You know, going from working in the white space to actually building site space. You were telling me for the last couple of weeks about something incredible you're building out called Startup Wars,
Yeah,
and that this is this platform you're getting ready to launch us outside of OpenForge. So, if you could just share what Startup Wars is, what your thought process in building it out, and why it's so relevant for you to launch it now.
yeah, sure. So Startup Wars is a mobile app. It's a game. It's a startup simulator, right? So you're basically the problem that we've been trying to solve, or that I guess I have identified from working with so many founders, right? Is how do you learn entrepreneurship, right? Like, I remember I took some entrepreneurship classes. I really didn't learn anything from them, right? I really didn't learn what it's like to have your own business until I actually started my own business, right? And it's the same across the board. And that's why I think so many businesses fail. It's because the only way to truly learn something is to do it. So what we did is we said, well, you know what? With games and gamification and immersive experiences, you can experience something digitally, right? So we said, let's build a immersive experience, right? A digital game that's a startup simulator, and that's how Startup Wars was born. So that's kind of like the project that I've been working on next.
That's incredible. And I couldn't agree with you more that, it isn't until you actually go out and try whatever idea you have and to go through the process of launching it that you're actually going to understand what it is to be an entrepreneur, because there's only so, I think you really highlighted it. You can't learn all the things that we go through as entrepreneurs in a classroom. There's just no way to actually frame it. And I think the term you use is simulate what it's like to be a founder. Yeah, you can have them work on projects, you can have them work with startup founders to help them, but until you actually do it on your own, it's a completely different experience. And you and I took the course because that was before they started the close school at Drexel.
Yeah,
So there's only so much that you can, and we had incredible teachers. There's only so much you can really pack into the thing
yeah,
to give you the
exactly,
experience.
exactly, right. And look, to be fair, right?
They're really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, I learned a lot about like I'd say like finances and business practices, right? In like classes I've taken and books I've read, but there's just nothing like experiencing it. And that's I think that's the same actually for any career. Like you can study trigonometry or geometry, right? But unless you're actually using it, you're going to be asking yourself, why am I learning this, right? Like how do I relate this, right? So
Definitely.
yeah, it's definitely important, and it's been a insane transition too, right? So one of the things that we're going through right now, and that I'm personally learning on like my journey, is how my career is evolving, right? So I used to, when I first started the company, I used to be still doing development, right? I haven't done that in probably 2 to 3 years, right? And especially over the last 2 years, right, it became kind of like a self-identity crisis, because I was thinking to myself, okay, well, I've had this company for essentially 6 years now, right? And in those 6 years, right, the first 4 years, I was learning and I was trying to do everything I can to build up a services company, right? And that worked. That was successful, right? So we built a services company. But then I started saying, okay, well, what do I do now, right? Like I'm going through the same thing over and over now, right? So now that that we've gotten to that point where OpenForge is stable as its own organization, I started asking myself, well, what do I do next? And that's when I started looking at some projects that were like passion projects of mine, that I thought had really good potential. And now I'm going through a transition of basically training up my team to take over for me, right? So that they can do the entire operations of OpenForge alone, without me as the founder, essentially. And I read a really, really good book that was recommended to me by some of my mentors called Built to Sell. I don't know if you've read it, Brian, but it's a fantastic book. It's essentially about having an agency, right? And how do you actually make an agency or make a services related business like a sustainable and valuable or sellable business. And it's, it's phenomenal in there, right? Because a lot of people are going to find themselves in similar situations as me, where, you don't have a ton of funding, right? You don't have, the next big idea, right? But you want to create a company, right? You want to, go out on your own. And services is generally a place that a lot of people start. And then from that, how do you take that to the next level, right? And how do you separate yourself out so you can work on other things and have the company work on its own? So I definitely recommend that book.
I appreciate that, and I'll definitely add it to my list. I have like 6 books that I have I'm ready to either start, or that it's kind of like I don't want to leave it on the back burner, so I carry them with me
Yeah.
wherever I go. So
Yeah.
right now, right now I can't go anywhere. So it's just like I put it in my bag and I literally just walk around the apartment with it so I don't forget to read them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You really touch on a great point of to empower your team to function on their own so that you don't have to be there holding their hand, so you can focus on the bigger picture and other things.
Yeah.
What are your guiding principles in being able to empower your team to get to that point and they don't get lost in the process?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I'd say overall, right, like the philosophy that we have is that anything is questionable, right? So in our organization, we do a couple, I'd say, pretty unique practices. First off, not only does every employee have basic employee benefits, right, salary, healthcare, etc., right, they also have stock options, and they also have a profit share. So we do a 25% profit share, right, as of today, of anything in OpenForge, right? So we treat the entire organization as almost like a shareholder company, right? Which means that everyone not only is is in for the mission of OpenForge, right, which is showcasing and sharing knowledge for mobile technology, right, but also they're into the actual business themselves, right? So the better the company does, the better they do. That mentality allows us to, and allows me to trust that every single team member has the best interests of the company in their mind as we're growing, right? Because the better we do as a company, right, the better they do, right? It's really good for I think just like motivation, right? The other thing I do is I make sure that everyone is very, very comfortable, cursing at me, right? And saying, Jedi, I think this is, effing dumb, right? Like, what are you doing, right? And I actually respect that a lot more than anything else. And I think that the team very much understands that, because what I want to basically encourage is I want to encourage a culture of people being free to express themselves. Now, we don't go like cursing at each other in a negative or derogatory manner by any means, right? That never happens. But, being able to just be themselves and be expressive, especially in a creative agency, is so important, right? And it also allows us to easily identify when we're having different types of process issues, right? I remember one of our team members, he's one of my best guys, and we had him as a project manager for, I'd say, 3 months, and he was the best project manager we've ever had, right? By hands down. And he was he's on the technical side originally, and he came to me 3 months in, and he's like, Jedi, he's like, I hate this role. He said, I feel like I need to quit if I continue to be a project manager. And I was like, we don't have to do that. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I feel comfortable coming to you, about this, right? And talking to you about this. So, what do we do? Well, it's not like I just was like, oh, well, suck it up or get a new job, right? I said, okay, well, let's figure out how we can, make your skill sets work, right? There's other places here, right? And he's still with me today, so just encouraging people to be able to communicate and and not be the the only voice in the room is so important.
Definitely. And I think that that openness and that ability to have that conversation with your team and them be where you're not in some ivory tower like in Frozen, it's so important that people know that your people know that you're approachable and that you're able to really listen and understand and not always agree, but to take a step back, but to understand where they're coming from. It's definitely something that I admire about you, and that's something I strive towards as well. But for there who are listening to this or watching this, it makes a difference, a huge difference, where people can be able to come up to you and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that again just ties back with the the more emotional aspect of the job, right? Which is it's a people business, right? And every business is a people business. You have to have real connections, and you have to have a real connection with your team in order for everything to move forward.
Definitely. And on that same note, we talked earlier about how your team is very comfortable with, being remote and having everyone work on their own. And it's really played well into the movement where we are now with COVID and how, the idea of an office is shifting right before our eyes. But
Uh-huh.
for other organizations that aren't on that same level, who don't have that same familiarity, these concepts with these arrangements, how can they better shift their mindset to make a remote working and remote learning situation work for them?
Yeah. So good question. So the I was doing a lot of research, right? When COVID hit, right? Because not only is it COVID, right? We have to remember that it's also a recession, right?
Yes.
It's the biggest recession since the last time we actually had a pandemic recession, which was in 1918, right? And if we look at all of the recessions between for the past, I think, 50 years, or I guess 70 years at this point, right? One of the, I think it was Forbes, did like a statistical analysis of companies that that survived and failed from those different recessions and what they did, right? And we see that companies that focused on just a defensive strategy, so just cutting costs, right, and pulling back and saying that this is the only way that we've ever done things and we're going to continue doing it this way. They only, I think they had a 21% chance of succeeding and surviving the recession, right? The companies who did the opposite, where they focused just on R&D, right, and just on new practices, they did it better, right? They survived at like a 26% percentage. But then the companies who did both, right, who did a balance of defensive strategy, right, so perhaps making adjustments to the way they're working, to their compensations, to XYZ, right? And also invested in the future, right? Acknowledging that, hey, there is change and it's here and it's now and we cannot fight it. They statistically succeeded 37% of the time. So basically double the success rate of surviving that recession, right? So, I think what this means, for us and for anyone watching this is, when you're looking at, how do you navigate, these waters and transition your team from the way you guys were doing something to the way, that it's going to be done in the future, you have to have a balanced approach, right? I don't think anyone is going to be able to get away with doing everything the same, right? And I don't think you should either. I mean, we've seen such opportunity, not only on our part, but also on our customers' part, come out of this new dynamic, right? Even from a networking perspective, think about if you're a founder, you're going to networking events, think about how much time you spend at networking events, right?
Yep.
And how successful they are, right? Statistically, calculate out how many client leads, right, do you actually get from that networking event? How long does it take you to get there, right? And how many people just kind of flutter away, right? Well, I've been more impactful to my organization working from home and doing direct communication with people I actually want to talk with than my entire past 6 months or 9 months of going to random networking events, right? So, look for opportunities to improve your life cycle. Assume stuff isn't going to be the same, right? And I think you'll, as an organization, I think every organization out there, if you adopt that strategy, you'll have a really good chance of not only surviving the recession, right, but also just succeeding in general.
It's really incredible advice, and I couldn't agree more with you regarding the networking event. You go into it, you register on Eventbrite or whatever, and you show up. You don't know what to expect. If you're going to see someone talk, they're going to take up half or 3/4 of the time. So
Yeah.
that lessens the amount of time you actually have people. And then, unless if you make arrangements before where you actually know who you're going to be speaking with and you can wave out to them, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. You never know what you're going to get, even
Yeah.
though every is definitely valuable and you should spend time with them, but will they help you move the needle? That's the whole question. And I think this opportunity of being able to refocus, realign yourself with your needs and what but do it directly and remove kind of that middle layer, will definitely help in the long run. I know it's helped me, it's definitely helped you, and I hope it'll help other people too.
Yeah, totally.
Rather to bring it back all full circle, you gave a really incredible nuggets of wisdom on teams and working from home and empowerment and networking, but of students, professionals, entrepreneurs, organizations that we work with. And based on your experience, and if we were to wrap up everything that we talked about in the past half hour, what are your empowering and leading a team, either in business or a project or whatever it may be?
Sorry, it cut out for a second. What are what?
Top 5 tips to empowering and leading your team.
Yeah, sure. So, I think the first one would be making sure that your team feels motivated, right? Have honest conversations with them. Find out what motivates them, right? For some, it's going to be the mission and the vision of the company, right? For others, it's going to be compensation, right? Find out what motivates them and create creative compensation packages, right? That, the company's success is their success, right? And, don't be afraid to give out more, especially like profit margins, right? Because, the profit, 25% of zero is still zero, right?
Yes.
So, let your team grow together. Another one would be encourage them to actually be able to speak up and to affect the process, right? Our company started doing so much better when I started stepping away, right? And letting the team actually, own their responsibilities, right? It's so easy for a founder to get locked in this repetitive process of, I'm answering questions, so therefore I believe that my team needs me to be there, right? But what I found is that if I just stopped answering the questions, right, and just said, what do you think? The team would be so much more effective, right? And maybe they got it wrong, 1 or 2 times, right? But after that, they learn so much quicker, right? Because again, the only way to experience it is to do it. And then, I think the third thing, right, especially like, in this time, right, in navigating this current environment is looking to the future and using this as an opportunity to figure out, what can be improved in your internal processes, right? That's going to include your entire team, right? Because I guarantee you they've been having pain points and everyone has been assuming in your organization that this is the way that it's been done, so this is the way it needs to be, right? And that is not true. Use this as an opportunity to have the entire organization question that line of thinking and say, there is no, this is the right way, right? What is the pain point, right? What has been working, what hasn't been working, and then, go from there, right? I think if you follow those 3 things, you'll do pretty well as an organization.
Definitely. And it's all about the people on your team and giving them the ability to make their own mistakes, to learn from them. But at the same time, allowing yourself the restraint to pull back where you're not nitpicking, you're not overbearing, but you're own. But at the same time, guiding them and making sure that they are on the right track. I think finding that balance is crucial.
Yeah,
And it's really that one of those deciding factors.
absolutely. Absolutely. Agree 100%.
We're
Well,
going
yeah,
to open up to,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to open it up to our attendees for our event today to see if there are any questions from the audience before we wrap any questions from our attendees. No, we, we did a good job.
We
I
did a
think
good
so.
job. I
We
think
did a good
so.
job. Awesome. You know, I always go into this, never know people are going to react or feel about the advice. Sometimes it could come off as, we're telling them what to do, but at the same time, it's, we're trying to share things, especially for you, because you've been through this a lot longer than I have, but at the same time, from a different perspective, and the fact
Yeah.
that you're really used to this type of environment. That was one of the reasons why this topic, because of what's going on now. So at least from what we see from the comments, it looks like that we were able to get the point across, and it's good.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. I mean, this has been fantastic. And if anyone has any questions,
And I can't.
if anyone wants any advice on the, feel free to reach out to me. My email is jediopenforge.io. Twitter, it's Jedi Hacks. And I'm always happy to answer questions, right? Because like I said in the beginning, we all grow together when we learn together, right? And sharing experiences, sharing knowledge, right? Sharing advice. It's such a powerful thing for a founder. And I will learn as much from you as you learn from me, right? So it's a two-way street for sure.
Exactly. You never stop learning. And I think they stop learning because the day you die. I think
Yeah,
that was the quote.
exactly.
So, before we let you go, when can we start hearing more news about Startup Wars?
Sure. So I think we're going to be releasing our website at the end of the month. So yeah, take a couple weeks, and then you'll probably see it on Twitter and Facebook.
Awesome. So, send that link to me. I'll make sure everyone who's on this will get that.
Okay, awesome. Sounds like a plan.
Definitely. Jedi, thank you so much again, my friend. I really appreciate the time and really incredible advice.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. This has been great. And thank you everyone who attended and who's watching the video. Yeah, I hope to hear from you guys soon.
Definitely. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon for our next event. So we have next Tuesday, John Lynn talking on innovation. We also have events coming up on the future of New York City Tech, future of Austin Tech, and a couple events on careers in tech. So feel free to check that out, linerun.co. But until then, see you soon.
See you.